What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 379. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts, and as always, I'm joined by
Right.
And this other guy named John.
and that other guy named John. How you guys doing? How's it going today?
Good.
Yeah, everything's good. Everybody's all right.
Pretty good.
Pretty
good.
Yeah. So this episode actually is turning out a little different than we had kind of teased or planned on last week's episode. We were thinking about doing a tier list for this week, but Ronald was thankfully and just so happy to hear it was able to go to an advanced screening of into Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse this week, and we just thought with it coming out Friday, it'd be better to maybe let him review that in a very spoiler-free manner, just so that we can get our thoughts out there as fresh as possible with the release date. And so with that, we jumped the gun and we're going to do his pick from required viewing last week. We were going to wait a little bit, but I think we're going to just push everything back. And the plan now is that once he does, we'll go over his pick from last week. I'll pick one for our next episode. But in between now and then, we're going to have an opportunity to see the new DC film, The Flash, next week. So our next episode will actually be our first tier list. We're going to do a DC or DCU, DCEU, DC Films averse. I don't know where it all falls, but we're going to do a tier list of that grouping of films. And then we'll do our Flash review in that episode. So that'll be episode number 380, and that'll come out in 2 weeks. But for now, let's stick to this one now that I've kind of run on and explained how things changed and what we can look forward to. And let's get into Ronald's pick for his required viewing for this week. Ronald, tell us about it again once more.
It is Vesper, the 2022 release. This is directed by who was it directed by? Christina Bolzite. I don't want to mispronounce or butcher it. As well as Bruno Samper, and he also wrote it with Brian Clark. This is a sci-fi film, and the description on IMDb is struggling to survive with her father after collapse of Earth's ecosystem. 13-year-old Vesper must use her wits, strength, and biohacking abilities to fight for the future. And that is exactly what she's doing the entire movie, fighting for her life. This movie is intense and kind of dark and mean in a lot of ways, but also really cool. What you guys think about it?
I'll go first. I really liked it a lot. I mentioned last week that I had it on my watch list as well because it had come up on a few lists from the year prior. I think it was like a sci-fi list of things you might have missed. But
Sci-fi.
yeah,
Sci-fi?
that newer genre.
Is that like short for science fiction?
That's what it is. That's correct. Yeah.
All right. Or scientific fiction.
I thought it was Sci-Fi. So
like a Sci-Fi, yeah.
I thought it was a kind of Wi-Fi that like could really like get you psyched up, but I didn't know.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not the fi from the sky though, right?
No, it's not. No, it's not Sci-Fi. It's like psyched up fi, and they just kind of they put it like they made it cute with cute spellings.
And it's not like Semper Fi like the Marines.
No, it's got nothing to do with that.
It's nothing. I mean,
okay.
Focus, Ronald. Focus. Yeah. So I really liked it. I mean, like again, it's kind of one of those smaller movies. Like I like the idea of like what you just read. The synopsis is it's a pretty big world, and like there's a lot of things that happened pre-movie and even while this movie's happening. But really, the story of this film is really contained, I think. And for being like a smaller film and independent in some ways, not a very large budget, I thought that they really, kind of made a really good looking, production design wise, and some of the special effects. Some of the like creature / plant kind of things suckling on people's bodies like that are left behind. Like some of that visual stuff was very kind of like the body horror, or like the Cronenberg almost, like kind of looking stuff.
Cronenberg
I thought that was
heavy on my mind.
I thought that was awesome. And it's one of these. I think the title card starts with like what does it say? Like the new dark age, or it's like the first words on the screen are like the new dark age or something along those lines. And the idea of resources being depleted and kind of mankind leveraging science and technology and engineering to try to stop it, in an instance, probably sped it up and, created an entirely different yet related problem that helped bring that end sooner. So, I like the idea of a sci-fi movie exploring that, and like in this post-apocalyptic world that these people are surviving in, where resources is so limited, you still have this like hierarchy of people or organizations or groups controlling like seeds, controlling things that they only have access to and that very few other peoples do. And I like that, and I like that that sounds really large, but yet when you watch this movie, I loved how like most of the sets were kind of in the Vesper and her father's house, or the uncle's house, or in the woods between the two. Really, like that's it. There's nothing really that grand in terms of the sets themselves, but I just think the production design was really good. The sound, the costumes, everything just was really impressive. And again, a good sci-fi story about artificial life that was engineered to possibly initially fix a problem that is now a different problem. And some of that world building I thought was really cool. The way that the uncle's using blood to like barter for things, from the Citadel, and just this those jug people that are people but not people.
Right.
Just a really cool
just
story.
called jugs, but we quickly realized they mean this kind of like genetically engineered slave humanoid that they've created that's like treated as non-human, but we're told they don't have feelings, but obviously that's wrong. Right. There's a lot of emotion coming out of that that injured one that we see. No, I think you're talking about my favorite aspect of it, Steve, which is I don't know if you want to call it biotech. There's like two different things happening in the story. There's like biomatter that Vesper has hacked because she's a whiz, and that's sort of like, if she's sort of a chosen one, that's kind of like her special power. Her gift is that she's like this expert bio hacker. So she's done that, and then there's also just the all around them is the vestiges of the genetically modified life that is part of, well, like you said, Steve, it's part of this failed attempt to, I mean, the way they word it is engineered viruses and organisms escaped into the wild after humanity tried to prevent the impending ecological crisis by investing massively in genetic technology. That's kind of like that's somebody who paraphrased the intro text of the movie on Wikipedia. But it's like, honestly, I actually, when it first came up, I rewound it and watched it a second time because it's like, I want to make sure I'm parsing all this. I almost wish that text wasn't there, because I think the story, I think that with a little bit more exposition thrown into the story, they could have just oriented you in that world without me having to like think about all that when I started this story, because it is amazing how small it is, and it is amazing how personal the tale is. And I'm not saying I don't want that information. I'm just saying that I spent the first 5-10 minutes of the movie trying to make sure I like trying to, like you're trying to memorize someone's phone number on the way home, and you're going, and I was like, oh wait, I don't really need to hold on to all that. And maybe that's why I'm saying I wish it wasn't there, is because I think this movie has it's almost like a fable quality or fairy tale quality at first, or fantasy, but to realize this is Earth and to realize what has happened, I think it might have been more fun to discover that on my own. However, that's just a minor quibble about the setup and the world that we're talking about. The world building is amazing. What they did with the, it's 5 million pounds, I believe, or 5 million euros. I don't know. I don't know what that is in dollars, but this movie looks like a lot more than $5 million. There were a couple of parts where I thought, oh, okay, I'm kind of getting used to the effects in this. In the early shots of the sort of simplest effect, which is the drone head floating around, that almost didn't look as good at the beginning as it did later to me. Maybe once I understood more what was going on. In that wide shot.
Yeah.
But
when she's walking up, I felt the same way.
I was like, oh, is that the level of effects in this? Oh, that's fine. It still looks cool. It was still well photographed. But I think once we got into that icky body horror, flesh, wounds being suckled on by these carnivorous plants, or what are the plants trying to do? She's not treating it like it's a life or death situation. She's kind of batting these plants away like they're bugs, like they're just nuisances. So it's just, you see the world. I don't know. I really loved that feeling. And then to learn and for it to kind of grow into this no pun intended, to kind of, there's a scene where there's this biomatter like growing across the floor at them and up over the table and everything. I just thought visually it was really well done. Yeah, the look and feel of it made it feel so grounded, and it might remind you of other dystopias if we were seeing like the cities, but we were seeing it. This is like out in the woods, and there's like two locations, kind of like you said, Steve. And the idea of the citadels, and we've when we do see them, they don't just seem like, oh, this is what happened to modern cities. It seems like a whole new system that crept in with these cities that look, again, like something out of a fantasy story more so than sci-fi. But I thought it was neat. I just thought, there may have been some parts where I was wondering where it was going on a story level, but I think the character stuff was so strong that by the time it got to the end and you see the moment they're building up to, it really does feel like, oh, it's cool that they kept it on this scale. There was a part early in the movie, though, when I was really starting to get into the world and I was hearing about the citadels, and where my little geek mind was firing with like, oh, I wonder what we're going to get to see. I wonder where all this is going to take us. And I think maybe that's fine that it stays smaller, but it definitely will. If you are a person who goes for this kind of story, I think it really will scratch that itch of just being a well-developed world. And I stress the biotech, the hacked ecology, whatever we want to call it. It really is visually arresting, and it will be beautiful and horrifying at once, kind of, if you really, again, if you let yourself kind of sink into the mood of this movie. I think, and it's cool to see like, oh, she's developing these plants like in a greenhouse type environment, but also there's stuff like this out in the world that she's cultivated maybe, or that she's growing. And that, like, I thought that was really cool when like her plant minions kind of help them out against the bad guys, or at least that's how I read that. So I don't know. I thought it was, and who was in it that is going to have a career of wasting away in beds in cool movies is that actor Richard Brake. Is that his name?
Brake, yeah.
Who played the creepy old guy in the sub basement in Barbarian, the guy who's being kept kind of prisoner / so he's like the daddy in that.
Oh, jeez. Yeah,
he's the one you follow through like the flashback.
Yeah, like, I recognized his voice when it was just the drone going around, and then I was like, oh yeah, that is him in the bed. And it's like, but it took me a second I didn't know if this was going to be all foreign actors that I hadn't really seen before because of the international nature of the production. Yeah. But also, Eddie Marsan is great in this. Like, he just conveys such menace and humanity, and even the way his fate is like deserved, but it kind of leaves you were talking around about the kind of meanness of this movie. That's one of the meanest moments in this movie.
Oh yeah.
It's just that moment where the guy, thinks he's going out maybe to get a reward or to have a conversation or make a deal. And it's like, no.
Yeah. I mean, but it's crazy. You're right, man. There's something weird about seeing somebody so villainous get their fate dealt to them and still feel like, oh man, that was way harsher than I was expecting.
Yeah.
It was harsh, but I definitely enjoyed it, man.
Yeah. What did you think, man? Like, tell us what
I'd recently seen Blade 2049, and I had maybe 10 stops and starts with that movie. And I finally gave it a go, and I loved it. I thought it was incredible. And
need to watch it again.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I watched it all the way through. And then I watched it again. And this kind of felt like a slice of a bigger world that exists. That they could have easily called this like a Blade story, or a Blade Runner story, or something cool like that. Mm-hmm. This felt so lived in. I liked that it didn't over explain things. Mm-hmm. And that felt cool. Like, it felt like, man, is there some source material I could read? There was it felt that.
No, I had that same thought, Ronald. It was like, is this based on a graphic novel or something like that? Because it had that
so damn lived in, like,
developed world.
Piece of everything, from the outfits to the Citadel soldiers, I guess, that came. And when you see what they actually look like, I was like, holy, whoa.
That's cool.
This is crazy. And the actors, I loved Vesper so much, and that dynamic with her dad. And when you realize what the drone is, little, oh man, it's kind of crushing, but he's so interesting. And he's like this voice in her head, sometimes literally, as he like kind of whizzes around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it almost sounds like a narrator voice the way he's laid in.
Yeah.
But right, it's like the voice coming out of the drone that it takes a minute for us to realize, oh, that's like the personality of her dad,
Yeah.
That can speak to her through that.
I really enjoyed that. It just had a cool message about, the environment, and if we mishandle it, what could happen. I really enjoyed it. So
there's a TV show supposedly coming from AMC, I think, based on the Bourne. There's a novel called Bourne by Jeff Vandermeer, and then there's like a couple of novellas associated with it. And it's not exactly this world, but it is a sort of far-flung future Earth that has had like mutated life spread over like this. And I felt like I was watching visualization of stuff that when I read those Bourne books, I was just like, oh man, someone needs to film that. Like there's just something, even though they're highly literary stories, there's something so visualizable about them, and you just want to see them done. And it's like, oh, this is perfect for like computer generated stuff that can look kind of organic, And when I was watching this movie, I was like, oh man, this is like in that vein. So if that show comes and it's good and it's made with production value, there's, whenever it comes, like honestly, that world is going to be not totally similar to this, but a similar approach of like it's sci-fi, it's futuristic, but it also almost has got a rewritten kind of fantasy structure because it's got like this new kind of life in it. So
That's
I kind of
Wow.
I hope that happens. So Ronald, you feel pretty good about your choice?
I do. I'm glad you guys liked it.
So you'd say it's another one of those things where it's like there's so much stuff out there. Like
I had that thought.
So much just like slips through and you just like miss it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's just this was a really good watch. Like I was like telling my dad about it because I'm like, this is right up your alley. Yeah. And you'd have no awareness of this if I hadn't just been, my co-host here on the podcast, they didn't pick it. Like it's been on my list for a year. It's like, and it's just like one of those things where it's like there's so much out there, and there's a lot of good stuff out there that just doesn't get in the theaters anymore, or even featured on a streaming platform. You know what I mean? It's just like, but yeah, this was a really good one. I thought this was really enjoyable.
Cool. I'm glad you guys liked.
I bet there's one universe out there where we did know about this movie a year ago, and we all watched it, and everybody talked about it, and I don't know if you guys have ever given a thought to that there could be like more than one universe or more than one version of what's happening. Ronald, any thoughts about that? Or I don't know if you've actually seen a movie, if you live in a universe where maybe you got to see a movie about that kind of thing, maybe you could tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. First, I went into it.
Okay.
Then I want to cross it.
Okay.
But hold on, before you cross it though, can I pick my pick for the next
what's your pick?
Viewing? Jump the gun here. So I'm gonna pick a movie that is a new release, relatively new. Again, this is in 2 weeks. It'll be out, or 3 weeks, I guess. Really, BlackBerry.
Okay.
So this will be on VOD as of the date that this podcast drops. So this Friday, BlackBerry will be on VOD. I really wanted to check this out in theaters. I didn't get a chance to, but so many people have recommended it to me. And I just love everybody involved with it, really. I love Glenn Howerton, Jay Baruchel, Matt Johnson, the guy that directed it. I don't know. I'm really excited to see it, and I'm really happy that it seems like it did pretty well for the kind of movie it is, but it comes on VOD the day that this podcast comes out, June 2nd or June 6th. I'm sorry. June 6th, I think. I take that back. So the Tuesday after, that's when the VOD stuff comes out. So by the time, it comes out, we'll have a few weeks to be able to watch it for the next, for episode 381. But yeah, BlackBerry, again, it'll be out. I'm just trying to double check this, but I'm pretty sure it's June 6th, which is next Tuesday.
Cool. And it completes the trilogy, Air, Tetris, and BlackBerry.
Yeah.
Of like,
I did that for you, John. Yeah.
Movies about products. But wait, Steve, I don't know if there's a special like buzzer that should go off if we both had a movie on our sort of list of required viewing suggestions. But BlackBerry was possibly going to be my next suggestion.
Oh, so that's awesome.
Because I was just thinking like I don't want that to always be what I do, but occasionally it's like I'm going to force a conversation about something brand new just to make sure we all see it. Because sometimes we do have like we're all busy men, we all have families. We can't always watch the same movies, and required viewing that's the great thing about it is it's the one way that we can all guarantee we'll all see it.
So. Yeah, and I just confirmed it actually is today. So when you're listening to this, it's June 2nd. So awesome. That film with Glenn Howerton from Always Sunny is coming out, as well as Fool's Paradise, which is Charlie Day's film that opened the same day that BlackBerry opened in theaters, will also be on VOD. I'm gonna check it both out, but I'm picking BlackBerry for required viewing.
Cool.
So
That's
yeah.
exciting.
So back to your traveling into and across something. Go ahead, Ronald.
Yeah, what is this thing that you've traveled into and across? I'm in a world of confusion.
The Spider-Verse or the arachnid interdimensional. There's like a crazy term that one of the Spider-Men uses. This is the
more
Lord
than one Spider-Man.
Yeah,
what
so many.
What?
This is the follow-up to the Lord and Miller. What year? The 2019? What?
Yeah, 18, I think.
Golly, 2018 film Spider-Man Into the Universe. Now it's across the universe, and this is part 1. A lot of people, I realized in the theater, did not know that.
Did not know this was going to be like a film buffs call this a Fast X style ending.
Yeah. And I think that some of it they should have known from the pacing, because we're like 2 hours into it and nothing's been resolved. You know, but
I think they're going to change that. I really do. Because I feel like a lot of the marketing and stuff had the part 1 in it. Like when they said that.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a little bit of like question on whether that would stick. And I mean, I've been watching this ever since then in terms of the marketing. And I don't know that I've seen one piece of marketing that actually says part 1 on it.
I haven't either. Why did
just like the Mission Impossible says?
I think they changed the name, didn't they? Didn't they make it some?
It's weird, yeah. So they there was reports that it was being changed, but I've heard so many people in the last week that have seen it in like reviews, podcasts, like videos that I watch on YouTube, and a lot of them are still saying part 1. And I don't know if that's because that's what the press material says, but like the poster, the listings on all the sites, like nothing says part 1. But yeah, I feel like I saw some report that like, or they had said something that maybe it was being changed to something else, but I don't know that I ever really saw what that was. But I don't know. I was just curious about that. Oh, actually, no, hold on. So here's an article. Beyond is going to be the 3rd one. So I think they did change it. So,
they took away the part 1 and 2.
The parts, yeah. So it was changed. So if you look on IMDb, the 3rd one is called Beyond.
When is that coming out? When's the Beyond?
So it says 2024, but I don't know that there's any chance in hell that happens. But maybe they were doing it in tandem, with this in some ways.
They did get a little extra time when this movie got bumped back, so maybe it's staggered a little bit. But it seemed, well, yeah, we'll see. I mean, we're talking theoretically about the movie, but you've seen it, Ronald. There is a universe where I was going to see this with you, but I was way too busy. Do you ever have one of those nights where you had plans that you thought you were going to make, and then when you decide not to do them, you're like instantly going, was I crazy? What made me think I was going to be able to do this? Like, what made me, because it's like an hour and a half drive or so. It often is very worth it, but not on a busy night. So I was very sad to miss it with you, but I'm super glad you are here with us on a day and date podcast to talk about it. So what were your thoughts?
I guess I have to go off my ears. A couple things. The theater experience was terrible. It was real bad in terms of sound. And this is crazy because this is Sony. Sony mixes tend to be insane. This was not. It was muted. It was often the explosions weren't very loud. But it visually was obviously incredible. I have to talk about the sounds first. Voice acting was incredible. Everybody returns that we know from the first one. Brian Tyree as his father.
He's great.
Luna Velez, who's Rio Morales. Who else? Jake Johnson
Haley
comes
Steinfeld.
back. Shamik, who plays Miles. So it is the crew that we know. And then we get some new voices. We get some new people that are incredible. I don't want to say who's who, because they, kind of the trailer. One of the things that I could tell you visually is that it's the Lord and Miller beautiful, innovative storytelling that we know, but something's been elevated. They've kind of outlined the multiverse as something, as a metaphor that we'll all get. And I don't want to give it away, but it's huge. And it's something that is this is so crazy. Somehow they managed to make the explanation of the multiverse a commentary on us watching this, and it still is a good explanation of how the multiverse works. I don't know how the fuck they thought to do it. It hurt my brain when you realize what's happening and how they're explaining it. That's incredible. Also, this is more lived in when it comes to the multiple Spider-Mans. Like, in the last one, we had a very casual look at those spider people.
Yeah.
This is different.
Spider folk.
You get a lot more of a lived-in feel to some of these characters. Some of the ones that you see glimpses of, they're in for way longer than you think. And there's a real big play. This isn't going to give anything away, of textures.
Oh yeah.
You
mean like within the styles of the different characters?
Yes.
And I think that's one of the coolest things about it, is that they've got like that many different animation styles.
And the trailer does not even show what I'm even talking about.
Okay, cool.
It's even more layered than that. It's even like a FPS thing. That's how crazy it is. It like shifts between textures, colors. It gets real weird. And so if Lord and Miller were preparing you for art style, this elevates it. It elevates the storytelling and elevates the relationships. It's not as funny, I have to tell you. So if you're expecting to laugh, you will, but you won't at the same time, because it's now three critics that I follow pretty closely have said this, and it hurts my feelings, but I bet it's a thing. This is the exact same story as The Flash, almost down to the conflict.
I've seen that, yeah.
Almost down to the conflict, and I can see that. But this is the one that I think is going to be, this is a playground. This is a playground where, if you're doing something live action, this has always been my chief complaint with things in the comic book world, right? You can't make some of this stuff look as good as it could look if it were, in a comic book. You see stills and frames from comic books. You're like, holy shit, everything looks like that in this movie. I know people say that for the last one. There's a huge gap in the innovation between the last one and this one. I don't know how it happened. They did something. They're doing a bunch of things at the same time. And for the casual person, maybe they'll only appreciate parts of it. But a lot's happening, especially if you've ever tried to make anything visual. It's fucking crazy what they're doing.
Well, I mean, it's cool that they're trying to push the innovation side of like even though this is not like an experimental movie, but it's cool that they're pushing the experimental side of that with the animation. I think that's something that, you almost don't need these movies to do that. Yeah. But it ties in with the multiverse idea so nicely that it's like in the first movie, it gave this great explanation for how the characters could kind of have slightly different design styles, but whole different universes is what you're talking about in this. And I think you can tell in the trailer, you only get a taste of it.
You really do. And you'll love it, especially since, again, it's like if the last one was a Lord and Miller sort of idea that was birthed from their minds, this feels more lived in. This is Lord and Miller. This is like for real. Like the last one felt like, okay, this is something that they had a hand in. This distinctly feels theirs for a bunch of reasons, and you'll find out why. But it is really very nice. There's a definitive villain in this one, which I loved. There's one villain. He is one person, and that's really cool. And when you see how this villain kind of moves around in the world, and also his voice versus what he can do, is so fucking cool. And they've showed him. Have they shown him in the trailer?
Well, I mean, the trailers shows some conflict, but the villain, I would say, the character, unless the villain is Spider-Man 2099, then he is. Is this a spoiler? Is he okay? No, the trailer makes the conflict seem like it's mostly with him, then the real villain is kind of seen scooting around in the background in a couple of shots. I think they kind of hide him in plain sight by making it seem like they take on a guy with the spots. That's what's in the trailer.
Yes, voiced by Jason Schwartzman.
Okay,
who fucking I kind of feel like sometimes he got like, I feel like maybe 8 to 9 years ago, he kind of got shoehorned into everything just because he's like this indie darling. But this fits him. His voice acting in this is really cool. And the other Spider-Men and women and animals and things are so fucking cool.
I can't wait.
This everyone, I don't know how else to say this. Everyone will feel seen in this. I don't know. There's no way that you can't identify with one version of this Spider Verse, and that feels special. This, like, I almost cried. That's how, like, there are people who I know will feel seen in this one versus, before it was kind of like, this is cool, like Miles Morales, obviously, but this takes it even further. This goes a little harder. And there are two people that exist in this world that are, you don't even know they're the same person. They're the same person. Holy shit. But fun movie, incredible. I hope I didn't spoil anything. Jason Schwartzman is so fucking good. And 2099 Spider-Man played by Oscar Isaac. Those are the two new voices that you'll hear. And a couple more that are so fucking cool. Blew my mind.
I may know about one of them. I've seen a couple of possible
you probably
spoilers.
Saw...
But I haven't been looking for spoilers on this. And it's like, it only occurred to me like today. Like, oh shit, this is going to be another one of those things that people can spoil just by, you know what I mean? Because people love to do that. Like, just say one little coy comment that ruins some whole shock.
Okay, I'm not going to say anything.
So
in the trailer, you see one of them. You see one of the spider people.
I think I might know the one you're talking about.
And that spider person is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. What were you gonna say, Steve? Were you gonna say something?
No, I took my earbuds out for a little bit. I feel like I was tiptoeing a little too close to spoilers for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a cool movie. You will absolutely enjoy it. Lord and Miller are doing God's work. And this is accessible. This is accessible, so much so that I kind of want to go back and I didn't get into the Spider-Verse stuff back in like 2014 because this is based on the 2014 to 2015 chunk. Some of the stuff that they're showing, even some of the comics that they kind of show, like they did in the previous one, it's based on this chunk of story. They obviously took some liberties, but I'm going to go back and read it. I'm super excited. Good movie. Well executed. So sad that it got split into two, but
now you have something to look forward to.
Yeah. Excelente.
It was a horrific accident in the movie factory that it got cut in half like that.
And they just had to roll with it.
Yeah. I think it was the guy from what's the guy from Roger Rabbit? Christopher Lloyd's character. He came and cut the film.
Oh, yeah.
Started putting cartoons in acid. Yeah, it was incredible.
So is this like, it's interesting, like, to talk about the box office for it real quick, because it really seems like it's going to be one of those great examples of like a severely overperforming sequel. Because it's not always the case, and it's actually rather rare if you look at like the box office history. But I mean, I've seen some projections that this movie's going to overperform the original opening week by like over 70%. Like they're saying 115 for the 3-day.
Here's what I'm afraid of.
I think bonkers.
I think they're going to leverage. This is why I want you to see it soon. I think they're going to fast X people. Leverage spoilers, because there's some cool shit that's in it that you haven't seen in the trailers that they're going to try to leverage to get people to go to the theater, and people will absolutely go if they know some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm a little afraid of that.
And that may be the case too. Yeah. I feel like the opening weekend stuff will be interesting, because I feel like, I don't know, like I really hope it overperforms to that level, because it should, because it's exactly. Like,
and how I mean, like, I gotta say this, man, Lord and Miller didn't have to do this. They didn't have to, like, in their position of power, didn't have to tell a story that has so much diversity and love. Right. And they are. It's like unreal that these two dudes are making this heavy, in a good way, story. Like the fact that my daughter will see this movie and see herself in it, and our kids will all see somebody in that story that they can relate to. Of all the groups, you know, you may see, you know, the noir Spider-Man from the last one and think, oh, that's me on the screen. I could be a little
think of it. So you're saying any noir detectives who see this are going to feel represented,
you know
as
what
well.
I mean? Like, it just, the fact that's even possible in a Spider-Man film is just so fucking cool. And I hope that it translates to live action at some point. We'll see.
Well, they're talking about a Miles Morales live action movie being like something that I mean, that seems like kind of a no-brainer, but I still think of all the sort of Spider-Verse, not animated, but of all the sort of Sony Spider-Verse expansions, I think that makes a lot more sense. Miles Morales makes a lot more sense to me than Morbius, you know, but call me crazy.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I don't know. They're amazing. The Lord Miller stuff. I feel like they're definitely on the like top 5 or 10 filmmakers that, like, you know, it's kind of like any piece of involvement of theirs in something, I'm immediately in, whether it's a movie or show, or, you know, the After Party season 2 is coming up soon, and like I'm extremely excited for that. So I mean, yeah, to see them, to hear so much positivity.
Clone High is
about
coming
this
back.
movie. What's that?
Clone High is coming back.
Clone High, yeah. Is that
It's
this
back.
week or next week?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was last week.
It's back. Yeah.
I mean, it's like you said, Ronald, that Lord and Miller didn't have to do this. I almost feel like that's the motto of their output. It's like they didn't have to add that layer of whatever they added. Like any project they've been involved in heavily. Last Man on Earth is another one that I loved, even though they weren't, that wasn't their show as much as Will Forte's, but they set up the perfect world. Like, again, to use that word again, world building. It's a piece of some of these things, and also like having a visual style or like a certain kind of parameter of what they can do that just adds that little extra. I mean, I remember when the Lego movie came out and we were all just talking about like, how did someone figure out how to make this toy commercial into something that felt like legit poignant and not, you know, maybe a little forced at its most emotional moments, but overall very clever and fun and funny and way better than it had to be. And it's Lord Miller didn't have to do this. They didn't have to make the Lego movie that good. Right. They've kind of done that with everything all along. So yeah, no, this to me seems like you talk about the playground. This to me seems like their playground. I mean, this seems like, man, this is the thing that like the pinnacle of what they can do. And I know that there's other people involved in the writing and creation of this, but just as far as having like a visual style and having like innovation and like, again, cleverness, but in so many areas. I mean, I'm speaking of my experience of the first Spider-Verse movie, but no, I mean, you just sort of have trust that that when they say, oh, we're cooking up something good with this movie, all along I've been kind of strung along and believing them. So
yeah, for sure.
I absolutely can't wait.
Looks awesome. All right, well, that's in theaters now, and hopefully we'll maybe chat a little bit about it in the next couple episodes once we all see it, or John and I see it. What else? Anything else you guys have watched since last week that you want to mention on the podcast before we wrap it up?
Well, I mean, Barry and Succession both aired their final episode this past Sunday, and those are two shows I've been enjoying over the last few years. Succession, I actually very recently got into, and like I've watched a little bits and pieces of it over the years, but this recent bout, I finally had some friends that kind of pressured me. They were like, "You need to watch that and catch up so we can talk about the final episode when it comes out." And so I did. So that was great. But Barry, I've been watching, all along, and I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I don't think HBO is ever going to have a shortage of something coming around the bend that is maybe going to be that next big thing or the show that people talk about. But this did feel sort of like a significant thing, especially 1 week into the Max era of HBO streaming. I still think people are overestimating the HBO brand being dead with the whole Max thing, when it's really just the name of the streaming app. I mean, I agree. I think it's stupid, but I also think when you go to Max, it's pretty clear that you're getting HBO through Max. It's not like Max is now the new name for HBO. If you're, anyway. But no, I found both shows, satisfying in different ways. I think Barry's been having a really interesting and almost like pointedly frustrating final season as far as like what the show wants to give you and what they don't want to give you in regards to these characters. And then I think Succession just really, to use an overused phrase about season finales or series finales, that really stuck the landing of, and here's the thing, I realized I think what you need to do if you want to have a successful series finale is finish telling the story you started telling. And
That's important.
maybe stick to that story all along. But I remember Breaking Bad, that's one of the things people liked about the end, is the end felt like it was about the same thing the show had been telling us about when it started. And of course, Succession is a much different show. But I think that, yeah, that finale, like when it went to black, it really did make you go, all right, complete statement. They really did. They really did go where they told us what we needed to know about the big question the show is about, which was who's going to take over this company when this big titan of I don't know if titan of industry, but titan of tech, titan of money. When he goes, who's going to step in? And we're in the age of billionaires right now, and we think a lot about them these days. So I felt like the show had a weird timeliness, but really what made it compelling was the family stuff. I mean, you have a lot of corporate, maybe backstabbing type stories out there, and stories of government entanglement and all that kind of stuff. But what made this really fascinating was, and feel Shakespearean at times, was the family part. And I don't know, I was kind of blown away. And it's one of those finales that the more I think about it, the more I find in it. I don't know about you, Steve. I don't know if you actually watched Succession, Ronald. Did you?
Yeah, I skip around, but yeah, the finale was one of the more satisfying finales I've ever seen. It just felt
definitely
like
recently, yeah.
I think that people are just expecting too much, and something about like people just being who they are. There's something about the facade that you have. I have this saying that I've been kind of everybody's nice is a convenience. It's really a convenient thing, and once you inconvenience somebody, that's when you find out who's an asshole. And once some of the characters get inconvenienced, they fucking lose their shit, which is really fun to watch, but also sad. And I saw this thing about one of the producers was saying that at the heart of it, it's a tragedy. And you should never forget that. And every time you think that they've won, a tragedy should happen.
Or every time you think someone's going to overcome their worst nature or whatever, it's like it's destined. I mean, that's I've always thought with a tragedy, I don't know who I heard say this or if I just developed this idea on my own, but what makes a story a tragic is when you can see how it could have been some other way.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
And I think these characters are full of that, the sort of like you see how they could have made it. But also I think at the end of the show, there's almost like a weird kind of, not a happy ending, but a completeness to it because of the way the darn thing ended. As far as like who ends up quote unquote with the job, I don't think anybody wins or anybody's on top. But I think that it's a really interesting, I mean, honestly, it was my favorite choice they could have made, honestly, was the choice they made in the finale of like who's running things now and just why that is and how that happened. I just thought it was so kind of real and heightened at the same time, which is kind of what you're talking about, Ronald, with these sort of, these little shifts that have these big effects, and these people who you don't feel sorry for them because they're all loaded and they're all assholes, but man, good drama makes you get inside the heads of people you would never like. I think all the time about some of my favorite characters on this show made me think all my favorite like schemer characters that I love on all these shows, would I actually like them in real life? Like, what would it be like to sit down at lunch with like Pete Campbell from Mad Men, or with Tom Wamsgams on Succession? Like, what would I find? They would just be jerks. They wouldn't be, they'd be seeing past you. They wouldn't be very nice. They'd be thinking about how they can get a leg up. They'd be thinking about how cheap my clothes were, all this kind of shit. And it just occurred to me that like even the characters I like on these shows that are kind of funny and likable, you would hate them in real life. And I think that 100%. Is sort of a crazy gift that a show like this can give you, is that it gives you that sense of the humanity of some of these people that you don't really have sympathy for. And I think also, the humor in Succession, it was known to be a very funny show, but it was crazy how funny it could be, like right up against being absolutely like upsettingly dramatic. It could also have like hilarious dialogue, and did pretty much from, to the last of this. So Steve, but I knew you had been watching the show. How did you feel about the wrap up and kind of how things broke?
Succession specifically. I mean, I really like the Barry finale as well, but Succession is like one of my favorite shows. So I feel like, it definitely felt like they knew exactly what they were doing with, where they wanted the show to go. And, even with it being a kind of thing where like some of the cast didn't even know this was going to be the final season while they were shooting it. And like, it being announced post-production and things like that. It just feels like a perfect ending, really, for like again, where this show started and what was told over the 4 seasons. I just loved all of the setup in this last episode, in terms of where we follow the siblings, the Mats and Tom meeting, them going to their mom's house, even more time with the mother. Like I've always thought she's great in the little bits that we get of her.
The meal fit for the king scene was great
Yeah, oh
because it
my
was like you
God.
got to see them
Yeah.
actually for once be like regular
Kids.
siblings.
Yeah. It felt very innocent, which you don't really ever get with these characters. But yeah, I honestly, I thought, I mean, this is an all-time show for me. And we joked about like talked about like the HBO tier list eventually that we'll do. But I really think Succession, even though, in context, may not have like the largest audience, it's one of their landmark shows or right now, or was, and just ended. But I really do think Succession is like in that class of like best HBO shows for me. I mean, it's just it's an amazing show. And
I mean, I know this is a crazy question. Is there an acting MVP? I mean, I know they're all great, but is there anybody who blew you away or stood out in such a way that you're just like, okay, I almost can't believe this person is this good?
I mean, I think of the season, it really kind of felt like Kieran Culkin really kind of blew out this season. Like he really kind of came on as like, wow. Like he's always been incredible. Like you said, everybody on the show is just incredible. But I mean, Kieran really had some moments, this season, where his character and what he's always brought to the show really got to be in the forefront of an episode or, a moment for him. And I thought he was just incredible. I think as a series as a whole, I really don't know I can go anybody but Jeremy Strong.
Right.
I just feel like the Kendall Roy character is the real tragedy that the show starts and stops with.
I was about to say he's the beginning and the end of the thing. So it's
and I just think for all the shit he gets for his method approach and just kind of how serious he takes himself and everything he does.
I love him.
I really do, like, genuinely.
I love his seriousness too.
I'm all about it. Like
I saw him do this thing in an interview yesterday. I saw something posted where he was talking about the characters, and he was saying, yeah, so the scene where we are in the kitchen. Oh, I'm sorry, the show's over. The scene where they are in the kitchen. Yeah. And then he finished what he was saying. I was like, man, that is so method, but I love it. I mean, honestly, and he really drank that shit that was in the blender too.
I know.
And he I don't know. I don't care if the other actors get the same result by not going method. I don't care how you do it. I love the idea that an actor can roll onto set and be like, what's my line? And then trick me into thinking he's a great actor when the camera's rolling. And I love that someone else can live in the shoes of the character and like wear different deodorant. And you know what I mean? Like, I love the fact that people do all these crazy things to do that trick on screen of great acting. So I don't care if you're method or not. And I think it's great that he takes such an intellectual approach because it means he can actually break down his process. And it's very gratifying to hear an actor talk about their process like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But I think it's funny. You're right, Steve. For some reason, people give him shit. And it's like, people hate when you use a word that they don't know or that they wouldn't use. And suddenly you're like, whatever. But no, I love the guy.
Yeah. He's the one. I mean, again, not to take away from the ensemble, because honestly, you could make a case for so many people in this show in terms of an MVP. But yeah, Kendall Roy, I think, is just like that. That's a character too. Logan and
like
Kendall,
Willie Loman.
Like, you're gonna hear these names, for years to come. And I think
Tony Soprano.
Yeah, exactly. You're right on. I mean, and even in those shows, there are other characters that you can make an argument as, the real MVPs. But like, I don't know, just the way this series starts, a lot of the arcs of each season really kind of float around him. And I just think Jeremy Strong is just out of this world. Like he's just like, you can't not watch him in any scene, honestly. Like I feel like he's incredible in the show. And I'll miss it, man, because it's one of those shows you just like, you really latch on to. Like I know how you feel about like when Better Call Saul was ending and we've had those conversations. But like this is one of those shows for me for sure, because like this is appointment viewing, and when it's on, it's like all bets are off. I need to watch it when it airs. Like, and my wife and I watch it together. It's like a show she's obsessed with. So it's one of those rare things beyond the quality and of it that, just as a part of my week to week kind of engagement, I'll miss it as a piece of entertainment, but it was great and I appreciate it. And I'm thankful that we had it. But
Ronald, do you have a favorite performer or character on Succession?
Kieran.
Yeah,
Kieran Culkin. I mean, he's my favorite. He's
so funny and so like, man, he's good. Like just his vocal, he's so fast talking, and like his his inflections are so meaningful and dead on. And he goes from like, I mean, the way that character has so many like ways that he protects himself, and puts forth an image, you know, and we see through it, but we also are surprised when it breaks and he's vulnerable. But yeah, I mean, I think that I was blown away by him. I think Matthew McFadden is like my dark horse favorite, though, just because the first time I heard him do Tom, I was like, wait, that guy, isn't he Mr. Darcy? And I went and I checked, and it's like, yeah. So he's like I totally believe he's this kind of galoot from the Midwest, you know. And then the way his character develops over the show, and the way that he kind of like turns the fact that he's not one of the members of the family, which at the beginning of the show is his liability, and at the end of the show, it's his best quality.
That meeting when he's like realizing what's happening. Fucking, and his cogs start turning in his head, and it's like making and the fight in the bathroom. It's like fucking.
Well, I was going to say the Disgusting Brothers, Greg and Tom, were my favorite. I was really glad at the end of the show that they still gave us an R2D2 and C3PO moment between those guys, because that's been my. Like, you're right. Oh god, the sticker, so fucking good. But like that, and I think that's why I feel like, as bleak as this show is, it still recognizes the humor of these characters. And at different times, it reminded me of Mad Men. At different times, it reminded me of Veep. Mad Men, because it's all about making deals and running down the hall to the office to find out what's being said about what. And Veep, because it's like small groups of characters, pairs of characters insulting the shit out of each other and talking shit about the person across the room. That's what Veep was. And when I saw that Jesse Armstrong wrote for Veep, I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense that he's just good at that. But so I think Kieran Culkin may have been like the acting MVP for me. But I think Sarah Schnook has like the best, maybe the best facial expressions of any actor that I've ever seen on television. But yeah, I think that the thing I'll miss the most is another chance to see Greg and Tom like have one of their, you know, they are alive at the end of the show, so it's like their scheming works, but the shape of what did their path is so funny how they get to that point. Anyway. And yeah, Barry, what a bleak, dark show that turned out to be. There's one element of the finale that I wonder if it's a little too dark for me, as far as one character's fate. It feels a little bit like, wait, why is this character getting screwed completely? But I think that the way that show could be that dark and that funny, in one breath, is something that Bill Hader, like, I really look forward to whatever he does next, because this was such a Bill Hader project that the fact that supposedly he's getting ready to direct a movie, and I think it's supposed to be a horror movie. If he's our next Jordan Peele, I'd be happy with that. The next comedy guy to go horror. So
pretty cool, man. Other things.
What else you got?
Have you guys seen the Ted Lasso season finale?
I have not.
No, I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not going to talk episodes back from.
I'm not going to talk about that yet. Then, I did want to talk about the Little Mermaid. And the scuttlebutt surrounding it. The scuttlebutt. I really liked the movie, but it lacked a soul, and it's not Ariel's fault. Like, I think that,
blaming Ariel.
Yeah, I think the whole thing
blaming
was
a fictional character.
It's like blame the multi-talented, beautiful singer as the reason why this movie was bad, and it really has to do with, I mean, these Disney movies are an argument for remakes not existing. I've
come around to kind of agreeing with that.
Yeah, and I could, I could tell that you didn't even mention it. I know how you feel about Disney, and you didn't even mention The Little Mermaid, and I could tell it wasn't because
I haven't seen it.
It wasn't because of the casting of Ariel. It was like, why do they keep fucking doing this? And it's a lack of commitment. Like, there's a reason why those movies worked. Some of it is just like the enthusiasm in the singing, the acting was top notch, and you didn't have to attach it to a celebrity,
right?
And there's something about the scope of what some actors and actresses can do or lack thereof. You know, it's like maybe you don't have the range to do this. Maybe you don't have the range to be a Caribbean crab. You know, maybe you don't have it, David. Maybe you don't have it. But the scuttlebutt, I love the scuttlebutt. I thought the Aquafina was really good. I thought that
she's got haters. I mean, doesn't she have like a bunch of haters?
Look,
I know she's put her foot in her mouth about some shit, but she's got some
that
haters.
She's an Asian woman that sounds the way that she does.
Yeah.
But also, like, people don't travel and have never been to New York. I mean, I don't know how many New York and New Jersey, that kind of like it's a melting pot. And people tend to grow up around each other and pick up each other's tendencies and inflections, and it just is the way it is. And if you haven't traveled a little bit or really know anybody that's really like this, like I knew this kid that worked at a corner store. His mom had a corner store in Baltimore, so he sounded like everybody he grew up with. So he sounded like a kid from Northeast Baltimore. I mean, it just was what it was. It's a weird thing, man. It's like this whole dynamic that people don't seem to understand, that you kind of are a product of the place where you are. That's neither here nor there.
No, but I think it's interesting, because I do think that's a big part of why people are, you know, like she just gets, again, why like people didn't like this song. So then it was like, now Lin-Manuel Miranda and Aquafina are, their names are dirt for a few days on Twitter, and it's like, okay, now they're the ones getting blamed for people not liking this movie, you know. So
I like Lin-Manuel Miranda, but I would fist fight him.
I think a lot of people would.
I think that's just like a thing. He has like this like microwave version of hip hop that like isn't really it. It really is like.
See, I remember when Hamilton got really big, having this conversation with you, and I asked you, I was like, to me, it seems like, it seems like it's like maybe in terms of musicals, this is like an amazingly dynamic thing, you know, that people are really responding to. But in terms of hip hop, this is kind of corny, right? And you were like, yes,
this is fucking. It was like something about it just isn't. You know, you've heard like anything like Brand Nubian Reminisce Over You or something like that. You hear that, and then you hear Hamilton, you're like, these aren't even the same genre of music, but people that go see that would have you believe that it is.
Right. Oh, here's the rap I like. That's the kind of impression I'm talking about that would bug me.
You are spot on, man, where people just like, oh yeah, that's what I like. A little Hamilton versus Wu-Tang. What? Leave.
But don't you think he also got the sort of not quite overexposed thing, but don't you think there's just a thing with a guy like that where they go through their punchable phase? It's like they're the darling, and then if they're still around, if they haven't topped that thing in some way, then now they're kind of a punching bag at a certain point.
100%. He's talented, man, but like, I don't need everything to be in rap style. You know, I like his just songs. He can write songs. And sometimes I think that he may feel like, you know, I'm a New Yorker. I have this connection, so I have to put hip hop in everything. And his songwriting skills are so incredible that he should just do that more than Scuttlebutt. But I love Scuttlebutt, by the way. I've listened to it like 20 times.
You're a Scuttlebutt defender.
I'm a Scuttle. But Eric, the other new song, Eric's song, is atrocious. I don't know if you've heard. Have you heard that, Steve?
No. I've heard people talking about it, but I've not heard
real. It's soulless, you know, and it's weird because, you know, Halle Bailey is bringing this like real insane like.
I never don't think it's Halle Berry when I first see the name in print. My mind goes to it's still. I know it's, you know, as a guy named John Walker, I understand what it could be to have a name that means a lot of things to people, but has associations. But yeah, I keep thinking Halle Berry. I'm sure one day I'll look at that and I'll think of the young actress who's in this film. I'm positive.
But right now you won't.
Well, so I have a question. Don't you think there's a little bit of like, we've been through like Disney Star Wars fatigue. Yeah. We've been through Disney Marvel fatigue. Don't you think Disney live action, quote unquote live action, when it's mostly CGI, but don't you think these remakes are going through that same cycle? Not that they were ever quite as big as those other things, but on a movie to movie level, they were. I mean, these were huge, reliable hits for them. Yeah. And then you would still hear that list of stuff they were making coming up and going, I guess they have to do Little Mermaid if they're going to do all these other ones because it's so huge. But don't you think there's a little bit of fatigue? You talk about the soullessness of it, but I mean, don't you think we can now look back and say that none of those live action Disney remakes have really like held the spot in your mind that the classics do. I mean, even one that I enjoyed, like Jungle Book, I have to kind of remind myself that I liked.
Yeah.
I don't know though, but I wasn't as on board for like Beauty and the Beast and Lion King and that kind of stuff. So maybe other people have favorites in this new batch, but I kind of think that it kind of feels like the soullessness is coming from inside the house.
I think it is, man. I think it is. I think that they're a little too stuck on attaching celebrities with it, and they should just find the most talented person, because you can make stars. Disney, here's the problem. You think, you know how like Marvel, the saying is, it doesn't matter who plays these roles. It could be anybody. They'll put anybody there, and that's the belief. That's the belief on the internet. But really what it boils down to is the quality of the actor or actress, and that should matter. Robert Downey Jr. changed the genre because he was incredible. It's not just you couldn't swap him out with many other people and have the impact that it did. So when I think about these movies, I think they should keep in mind that like you would maybe add 200 more million if you just casted somebody that was incredible in it. Like Halle Bailey was the centerpiece. They casted the right main person, and then everybody else around it. And it's mainly the story. I think it's just like the visuals are bland sometimes.
I was going to ask about the visuals. Like,
so I think it's a beautiful movie, but like the special effects get weird. Like there's a part where eels are kind of tying somebody up, and it looks like it's like a flip book. Like it could have easily been like, and they just made it transparent and imposed it over the people. It just was, those parts were really hard, but this is gonna be some people's only Little Mermaid. So in that respect, maybe if I didn't see the original, maybe I'd be like, this is really great. But the fact that we have the original at our disposal, that's out of the vault for free on Disney Plus in the best quality that you can get it in, GTFOH. I mean, if that's what we're talking about, if we're talking about the quality of the story, let's just go see the original. I'm not trying to knock Halle Bailey because I think that she's incredible in this role. I just think that the movie itself is soulless. And just because what's the name was good too, but Poor Unfortunate Souls and Under the Sea, the new ones, are poo-poo in comparison to the new ones.
Yeah, I saw some of the Under the Sea, and I was like, yeah.
Poor Unfortunate. I mean, she kills it. Like, and that still isn't as good as the new one. I mean, there's the old one. The old one is so good. It's so good. Under the Sea is really good, even though I'm sorry.
Even though what?
David is just he just pisses me off, man. He's so good, and then he's so terrible at the same time. I don't know how else to. Yeah, this wasn't it.
I'll see it eventually.
Yeah, man.
So would you call it the Little Mermaid?
It out.
It's the problem,
or the Little Mermaid.
I would call it Little Mermaid: The Discovery of Scuttlebutt. Because I would love Scuttlebutt. I can't stop thinking.
It's been rebranded as part of the Scuttlebutt Chronicles later, so they add the
have a whole
Discovery
spin-off
of Scuttlebutt
universe. Yeah. Scuttlebutt universe.
God, Flounder looks terrible.
Oh yeah, no, no, kill it.
You're really selling it, Ronald.
Flounder looks terrible. He's like, you can't emote.
He looks like a flounder.
He looks like a flounder who is like not talking at all. It's just like it's like surprised, but it's like dead eyes. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe that.
Can't wait to see it. Shot up my list.
Okay, I'm done.
I had a couple I was going to just rail off real quick.
Sure,
I know a couple of them we've already talked about on the podcast, but I finally caught up. I finally saw Evil Dead Rise. Loved it.
What'd you think? Okay.
Loved it. Cool. Absolutely loved it. Finally caught Guardians 3. Also loved it.
Okay, good. Good.
I wanted to catch it before it lost some of its screens this coming week. But And then the two other movies that I watched that we haven't talked about, just to mention a little bit, are both available on streaming. One is called Reality. It's a Max original on Max.
Okay.
This is with Sydney Sweeney. Excuse me. It's with Sydney Sweeney, and it's basically about the whole how the FBI came to learn about it. It's based on the true, like the reality winner story, like about how she kind of provided the documents from regarding the Russia election interference and things like that. And I think she's currently in serving time. Yeah, she is actually in prison.
Oh wow.
Or actually, is she still? I don't know that, but I don't know. But it's based on this true story. It's a really interesting movie on Max. Sydney Sweeney is incredible in it. I don't know that I like love Sydney Sweeney. I do like her, and I've liked her a lot in some things that she's been in. But I know she's like one of the it performers right now. She's in a lot of stuff coming out. She's speaking of the spider of it all, she's a reportedly going to be one of the versions of Spider Woman. Um, but
wow.
in the Madam Web film that's coming out that Sony has. But yeah, this is a really really good film. I really would recommend checking this out. It's really interesting. It's interesting how it's told. It's basically taken entirely from the audio recording that the FBI agents had on them when they confronted her and served a warrant, stayed at her house, questioned her about documents that she accessed, and that she leaked to the press that then got reported on, and eventually they found out it was her. But yeah, no one knows about this film. And, I came across it on a critic that I follow. He was just kind of raving about it, and he had it in some of his top films of the year so far. And it's on Max. It's really great. It's very much like if the kind of thing like the Snowden film, just these documents that get leaked in the interest of transparency, maybe things that aren't being reported on, and that's maybe we should know about. But yeah, that's on Max. Again, it's called Reality. And again, it's about the reality winner. The documents that she leaked regarding the 2016 election and Russian interference in it. The other one I wanted to mention, it's been out for a couple weeks, but I finally got around to checking it out. It's on Apple TV Plus, and it's called Still, a Michael J. Fox movie. Incredible documentary. With the topic of a movie star of our generation, and with footage from him and those around him, some recreated footage that is edited together like so incredibly. I mean, it's really one of the better made documentaries in that space where they kind of like recreate footage and kind of edit it into the footage that he has or that he's provided to the filmmaker. But yeah, it's what's his name, Davis Guggenheim is the director.
Okay.
Who I remember from An Inconvenient Truth, which I remember working on when I used to work for one of the studios. That was the Al Gore documentary about global warming.
I know that he's been attached to others as well, but I can't remember.
Yeah, he's had a bunch of them. He did like Waiting for Superman.
Right.
Malala, he did that doc. He's done a bunch of really great documentaries, but this is, I mean, because growing up, like Michael J. Fox was the guy.
Yeah,
like he was the fucking man. Back to the Future, one of the best movies ever made. Marty Fly, like even other things he's done. They spend a lot of time talking about Facts of Life and just all the movies he even made post Back to the Future. But yeah, just really kind of focusing on him, where he's at in his life now, the Parkinson's diagnosis, when it came in his career, how long he hid it, and what he's done for research with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. It's so inspiring. It's so sad, but it's so inspiring, and it just kind of cements him as just like an all-timer for me. I've loved him forever. And you don't see him or hear a lot about him anymore because of his diagnosis and where he's at, and what he's doing more in the kind of research and fundraising for research for this disease. But yeah, he's just incredible in this, like seeing him struggle and talking about his struggles and just seeing footage of him in his day-to-day life. And it just was really good to see him again. And, even it's really hard to watch him in that state because you don't really see him a whole lot. But it's so inspiring, with the determination and the courage he's just, it's a really, really great documentary, especially if you've ever loved Michael J. Fox or anything that he's ever been associated with, whether it was Facts of Life or is that right? Facts of Life?
Family Ties.
Family Ties, sorry, yeah. I mixed those up. Family Ties or Back to the Future or Spin City or any of the movies in between. It's just he's got such a great filmography, and he's a Hollywood legend, and just his story is so interesting, where he came from and how he ascended to who he became in the 80s. And I can't recommend. It's definitely one of the better documentaries I've seen recently. And again, it's on Apple TV Plus. It's called Still, a Michael J. Fox movie. And I would love to recommend that to as many people that might want to watch it.
Cool.
And that's what I got.
All right.
There it
is.
It's
a show.
There it is, guys.
Yeah.
Again, next week we will be off.
Next week, that's not a show.
We're out. We're no show next week. The following week, episode 380, we're going to have our first tier list. We'll be talking about the DC universe, DC films universe, and a review of The Flash. And we can even include it in our tier list, having seen it. So that'll be fun to be able to include it there. Yeah. And then the week after that, we'll do my pick that I just mentioned earlier in the podcast for required viewing, which was the recent release BlackBerry. And that'll be on video on demand as of the day you're listening to this podcast, as long as it is on or after Friday, June 2nd. So you can find that on the video on demand if you want to check it out with us. Movieschmovie.com is the website, youtube.com/movieschmovie podcast if you want the video options, which again, Ronald, we need to get on the whole tier of it all to figure out how to get that tier list incorporated into the YouTube piece. But that'll be a really fun thing to see if we can make that happen for the next episode where we do our tier list. So go there, subscribe, hit the bell to get notified when new episodes come out. And the movieschmovie.com site that I mentioned, you can go there to subscribe to the podcast if you're not already subscribed on the platform of your choice. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you made a day.
Bye.